just randomly got this message from Riverstar of like, Chris Lake wants to release this. I'm like, what is it? I had to listen. I was like, what is this? And when did I make it? I was like, oh yeah, that is me. But it was made for like a DJ Zinc tune, you know, like 2-3 years pre.
You've actually collabed with a lot of big people, Ben Bowman and people like that. I mean, how did you build them relationships and reach out, or did they reach out to you and build that network?
That'll build your character pretty quick, because most of the time they're not that easy. And the benefit of it is it really trained my ear and my relative pitch, you know, and that's really helped me in DJing. I named it that because I wanted to hide behind it for a bit. You know, I wasn't ready. It was the first music I'd ever made. I just felt like I reached the ceiling with it in terms of a DIY self-funded pop project. I just couldn't see a way forward with it. I remember spending my first entire student loan on like, it was like literally like producer like starter kit.
Back to another Rovering podcast, and today I've got Lau.ra. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I can start with all my guests. Like, where you're from, where'd you grow up, and how did your introduction into music or electronic music start?
Well, I am coming to you from Battle today, which is in East Sussex, but I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Midlands. I was born in Coventry, grew up in a village outside of this like small-ish commuter town called Rugby. And I lived there until I was 18. And then at 18, I moved to London to study music at Goldsmiths University down in New Cross. And so I was in Southeast London for the best part of 15 years or so. And then, yeah, I've just moved down to East Sussex about 3 years ago. So I've kind of started in the middle and slowly moved further south. And then, I don't know, you know, maybe we'll be here forever, maybe not. And maybe eventually we'll move back up towards the Midlands again. I don't know. But for now, Battle in East Sussex is home.
Yeah. I was just there actually about, well, in February I was just there actually.
No way.
Yeah, I got family that live in Hastings. I was down by the beach and doing the arcades and the typical, you know.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
boy and that, yeah.
Wicked. Yeah, we accidentally moved down here really, just because a lot of our friends moved down Brighton and Lewis way. And we just started looking further and further out to get like the right place that we wanted, and ended up here by accident. But yeah, we love it.
Yeah, it's lovely down there, isn't it? We, like I say, we did all the cheesy stuff like the arcades and stuff. And
yeah, man, you got to do that. Yeah, and that's what British like seaside towns are about, aren't they? Arcades,
it is,
kind of cheap stereotypes. It's good.
Yeah, so like, where did your influence start then with music? Because I've read a bit about you and stuff like that, and obviously I know your dad had a bit of a role in what you did when you were younger, right? So how did that start really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't come from a particularly musical family in the traditional sense, but I do. My dad was an actor and then professionally a writer, a theatre director and writer. So there is definitely performance in my family and in my blood. So he had a big influence on me in terms of in summer holidays in school, or if I had to do work experience, I'd usually tag along with him and I'd be watching him, you know, create from the very first kind of read-throughs and castings to, you know, what eventually ends up on like a massive West End production. So that definitely, I think, had an impact on how I approached my music career in terms of performance, and certainly like creating a world online, aesthetically, all of that stuff like that. I think it definitely must have had an influence on me, because I do find that bit kind of comes quite easily to me, being able to kind of create a world around my music. But to be honest, I didn't really, it's been a long journey for me to get to where I am now. I think mainly because growing up in Rugby, Sleepy Town and Rugby, I just didn't really see anyone doing anything other than just like the mainstream kind of popular culture at the time, you know? Yeah, we had like 3 nightclubs, which were like playing top 40 chart hits, or like club versions of it. You know, it definitely wasn't any cool electronic music coming through Rugby. If you wanted like cooler underground stuff, you'd go to Birmingham. But again, didn't get over there very often because we were like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18. So yeah, it wasn't really until I moved to London that my world exploded with more interesting electronic music. You know, I got into Bjork and Aphex Twin and Klaus Nomi and Laurie Anderson, and like lots more kind of experimental performance art side of things. A lot of my tutors at Goldsmiths kind of started to slowly introduced me to that and pushed me in that direction. I think they saw some similarities with how I'm very DIY approach to the music I was producing and making at the time. And I got into producing music through necessity, really. Because having, like I said, I grew up in rugby, I kind of just assumed that I was going to be a pop star, you know, because that's all I'd ever seen women do in music, really. Like all the women that I saw were on your TV screens front and center, like as vocalists and singers. And I was gifted with a good voice from, you know, from when I was a kid. I've always sung since I was about 5 years old. And I didn't start writing my own songs till I was a teenager, 13 or so, maybe a bit older, 16. And then, yeah, got to London and realised I didn't really want to be a singer-songwriter anymore with the piano and writing traditional songs. I wanted to start messing around with electronics and basically get all my gear into a suitcase rather than have to rely on carting a stage piano to different shows. So yeah, I basically just started messing around with samplers, and it's one of my first little, like, I had a loop station, and this is one of my first little samplers I ever had.
That's legendary.
For the project there, and you know, just like messing around with like gear that I could beg, borrow, or steal from anybody, because I was a student, didn't particularly have any money. I remember spending my first entire student loan on like, so it was like literally like producer like starter kit. You know, it came with like a light version of Cubase, some very basic speakers, a PC laptop, and you know, a USB keyboard for about 500 quid, I think, or less even. It was so basic, but it got me on the road to producing. And I kind of started there because I was a frustrated vocalist who'd kind of caught a little bit of buzz when I was in, you know, I'd done my kind of uni course, I was graduating from that, and there was like stuff starting to happen, you know, stuff was getting played on BBC Introducing. There was like labels more in the, it was a pop, kind of alternative pop project at the time that I was doing called Dimbleby and Kappa, which then morphed into a project called Femme for about 6 years. Around that time, I started Lau.ra with Nigel Godrich and Joey Waronker, so I did that for quite a long time as well. In between, like, I ran all these different things in parallel, and then eventually, after about 6 years of doing Femme, I just felt like I reached the ceiling with it in terms of a DIY, self-funded pop project. I just couldn't see a way forward with it, especially on the touring front. And then that's when I started to dip more into kind of dance music and started to DJ and started to see that as a way that I could still make the music I wanted to make, but also reach people and be able to tour kind of internationally without the humongous costs of trying to tour a pop project. And that's kind of how I ended up here over a series of 15 years or something. 2009 I graduated, so it's been a long old road.
Wow, you've done a lot then. Because I did read you as part of a duo thing, and then obviously you went on your own to do the pop thing. How was it navigating like the duo thing and starting it, getting into it, and then building that? Because I want to tell people a story about yourself, so I want to dive a bit deeper into that to build like how you formed what you are now, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Dimbleby and Kappa it's a duo name, but it was actually just me. But I named it that. I named it that because I wanted to hide behind it for a bit. You know, I wasn't ready. It was the first music I'd ever made. And the first music you ever make is crap. So I knew I wanted to hide behind something for a while I figured out what I was exactly that I was doing. So I named it that. But I was in a band called Lau.ra after I graduated. And that is with a very, like I say, successful producer, Nigel Godrich, who produces Radiohead and has produced many amazing records over a long time, and Joey Waronker, who again is a phenomenal drummer. So I was kind of graduated. I hadn't even graduated. I think I was in my second year of uni, still totally green. And I met these guys and they were like, let's make an album, let's make a project. And I was kind of precocious and a little bit like, you know, because I hadn't really grown up on Radiohead. I got all my music from my older sister. For whatever reason, my sister didn't listen to Radiohead. So I kind of got to, when I was introduced to Nigel and Joey, I didn't really have a good grasp on the legacy of music they'd produced, which I think was probably a good thing in some ways. But I was like, you know, I was listening to MIA and Santigod and way more into that. And I hadn't really, I wasn't shell-shocked by kind of their legacy, if you like, which I think probably helped the project. And we just started making some tunes off that. And I learned so much. The learning curve was so steep. in terms of being in a band, because I'd never ever been in a band. I'd always just made music for myself, with myself, and not really ever enjoyed the kind of the dynamic of compromise that comes with being in a band. And I think the music we make as altruists, I would never ever be able to achieve on my own, and that's the beauty of it. It's like those compromises, creative compromises, and those avenues you go down and the decisions you make that you wouldn't usually make on your own, you end up creating something completely unique that you wouldn't be able to do without those people.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But equally, it's hard. It's hard to get that project off the ground. It's very, very expensive, and everyone's really busy. So as an antidote to that, I started my project FEM, and that was like a complete kind of kick in the other direction. I was like, I just want to make silly pop music. It wasn't like super cheesy pop. It was certainly in the kind of Santi Gold, MIA kind of realm of pop music.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't want to be in a serious like arty band anymore. Let me just make some silly pop music for a while. So I kind of ran those two in parallel for a bit. And then towards the end of FEM, you can hear my last couple of releases for that. It was starting to go in a more kind of electronic direction. And then eventually, after a kind of a little break, I'd made so many tunes that just didn't sound like FEM tunes anymore. I was really enjoying not putting my vocal on things, just stepping well away from kind of the songwriter structures or the songwriting structures, just using my voice more as a sample. And then suddenly I had a load of music that just didn't really fit under that kind of project anymore. So that's when I started Lau.ra.
All right, that's cool. And I'm glad you brought up about like when you say everyone make their first tracks, when you listen to them, they're always shit. Because I'm the same. I listened to some of mine back in the day and I'm like, oh my God. But then it's a good learning curve at the same time, right? I know it's cheesy as hell.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's it. Like production is only just hours and hours and hours of practice, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to be bold enough to release it. Like I have so many friends that have like practiced and probably masters at what they do, but just haven't ever released any of it because they don't feel it's ready or it's not right yet. And it's like, God, you only learn really when you shove it out. That feeling when you put it out and you let go of it and it becomes like something else bigger than what's just sat in your computer for God knows how long.
Yeah.
It's like, it's quite a relief and you're like, okay, now I can like move on. And then when you dip back, I very rarely go back and listen to much older music of mine. Obviously the music I've made in the last kind of 4 years, I'm playing a lot in DJ sets, so I do hear that over and over again. But I'd very rarely dip back into kind of old catalog stuff. But of course, like it's mixed badly. The sounds probably could have been better.
Yeah, as always,
really
right?
Man, but I didn't really know what I was doing. But that's half the fun of it. It's learning, and and you have to do so much of your own artist development now. Like when I speak to like upcoming producers, like how do I create a unique sound or whatever, and I'm just like, just have to start doing something, and work within your limitations and see your limitations as like an advantage, really. Even if you've just got one set of headphones and one USB keyboard, okay, you've got to dive into a load of sample packs and start manipulating that and processing that, and that suddenly, the better you get at all that, your sonics and your sound and your signatures will just emerge. I think one of the worst things is kind of feeling like, oh, I can't do this until I have that piece of gear, or I really need to get this piece of gear. It's like, just work with what we've got, and it will form your sounds,
Yeah, definitely. I've been through them phases, I've bought like Euro stuff, I've bought hardware, and I think it's going to make me a better producer, but it doesn't, just like I was watching Billie Eilish and her brother do an interview, and he got recorded a sound in Australia of the traffic sound, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I mean, what would you say how would you be satisfied with the track? How do you know that you've made a good track that you're happy for release?
I guess for me, I've always just tried to make music that moves me, not in a necessarily like an emotional way, more like I'm kind of really usually focused on a group, like the interplay between bass and a beat, and then I see one of my strengths is being able to, you give me any kind of vocal, I will be able to chop the best bits out of that and create something that you can't get out of your head. That's one of my strengths. I think probably because I have been a vocalist and more in the pop world previously, I bring that kind of sensibility into my dance music. And I'm like, well, that's the catchiest bit. And I know it's only 3 seconds of audio out of this massive verse that you just left me. But trust me, if we just repeat this for 12 bars, it's not going to be able to leave people's heads. I see that as one of my strengths. So I think that is usually like what I'm trying to achieve, really, is trying to achieve the maximum impact with as little music information possible.
Yeah.
That's kind of my approach to it, really, like banging tunes that aren't that complicated.
Yeah. And that kind of goes in with what, when people are asking you for advice, isn't it? It's like, how can I make my sound unique like you do with your vocals you can chop them up and that's your sound, right? And that's going to benefit someone else, definitely. So
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is, I think, just keep doing it, keep making stuff, and yes, reference in terms of mixers, other people's mixing. I've always found that useful. I always used to wonder how Chris Lorenzo got his bass to sound so damn fat. I was listening to those and I was like, and that for ages I was like, my bass is good, but it's not Chris Lorenzo good. There's something about that very clean but like subby kind of impactful bass that he's able to achieve. I'm like, oh, so I always reference different people's tracks in terms of the mix, but never, in the composition, because I think it's always a strength of the sound just to do your own thing, really. Just be slightly out of the box, especially in terms of kind of streaming and support there and on the radio. And that's really kind of where I have found I've gotten a lot of support is the DSPs, radio and sync. I do a lot of production for sync. So yeah.
But with obviously we're going to go back a little bit with regards to like obviously you learned the piano. So I'm guessing you learned music theory pretty well.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of thing, right? I mean, I learned the piano when I was 5 for like 2 years, and I was like, oh, fuck this is too geeky for me, kind of thing. But it helped me out a little bit later on, right? As you do grow up, you change your mind in sorts of ways. So do you think that has benefited you, like doing the pop as well to what it is now? Do you know what I mean? If you got like valid lessons that you learned back then to now?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I was kind of a bit like you. I played the piano for a bit longer than you, but I gave it up when it got a bit serious. When I got to like grade 5 and it starts getting really heavy in terms of the hours you have to practice to jump from the grade 5s to the grade 8s and beyond, or whatever it is. I was probably 13 when I packed it in, but probably started around 7, 8 years old or something, so I was a competent piano player and I knew my music theory fairly well up until a certain point. But yeah, when it started getting serious, I kind of packed it in, and then came back to it as a 16-year-old and kind of started writing my own thing. Abandoned a lot of the music theory. I was playing more chords and stuff, but at least I knew my way around a keyboard. And what kind of what complemented each other. But I think more than anything, the benefit of it is it really trained my ear and my relative pitch. And that's really helped me in DJing, certainly. And it's helped me with production and composition. Sometimes I like rally against that, and I like to make things that are in different, sections of songs that are in different keys and kind of play off that. But it hasn't hurt to have had that training from a young age in terms of being able to hear, similar things that are in key and, oh, that's going to sing well over that, or, it makes the job a lot easier, I suppose.
Do you think that's a difficult thing now for people to learn getting into production? Like, do you think they have to know that's part of music, or they can just get in?
Probably not.
No?
No, they probably don't need to know it, honestly, because there is a lot of technology out there. Most of it does it for you. Like when you on your Splice lab samples, it can transpose it all for you. And even on Recordbox, you don't have to have the traditional keys, do you? You can have the numerical keys or whatever it's called. Yeah. So I think, no, you can probably get away with not doing it. And actually, a genre of music which I love, which excited me because it didn't really do harmonic things, was grime.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I was like, this is a weird piece of music. It's like totally like atonal and the bass is in a different key. Then it drops and I found that really exciting. And you can kind of in the same way that like garage and like in those 90s sample heavy garage tracks, you're like, whoa, this is bonkers. Like the vocal can be in a total different key to them and the bass drops in and you're like, And I found that very interesting. And you can kind of hear that it's been made by people that possibly haven't had a grounding in music theory, but they're making really exciting music as a result. So I don't think having music theory is essential by any means. Obviously, if you want to make, I don't know, massively harmonic, progressive, I don't know, whatever, like maybe some music theory might be handy, disco or something, I don't know. But, all of your training essentially will mold where you end up, and play to your strengths, I guess. That's kind of what I've always tried to do. It's just like, well, I seem to be good at this, so I'll go a bit further this way. And then if you want to bring some of that other stuff in, find somebody to help you, there's no shame in that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, because I got a lot of people who watch and listen that are new, and even people that just ask me and message me like, oh, do I have to know this and know that, or do I have to have this gear and that gear? And someone like yourself, like, explaining that you don't need that, is beneficial for someone else. Do you know what I mean? And it takes away a lot of that nerves just by hearing someone say that. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's like a wicked thing to.
Yeah, I mean, hit tunes are made now on like a set of headphones with some really well processed samples, and it's like a hit tune is just a great idea, really.
Yeah.
That's what's going to carry a song from being just a groove or whatever. It's like you can make those groove tracks for days and days and days, but they're quite forgettable. If you want to make something that really sticks, that people come back to again and again in years to come, it's like there has to be a great idea in the middle of it, and that doesn't necessarily have to be, say, the most complex idea ever. Usually isn't.
Yeah. That's like deadmau5, right? deadmau5, I was watching a video of him, and he's like, I'll just fucking bash the keys and I'll just go with that, like.
Exactly. Just do for you, right? You just do what you're capable of, and do what feels right, I guess. And that's how I've always, going way back to the question originally, how do I know when a track feels good? It's like I'm moving to it. I'm in my studio, I'm like, I can't get enough of it. And usually I'm playing it on repeat and on repeat. And then I'm playing it in my car. And then I'm playing it on my headphones. And I'm like kind of lost in it for a while. And then usually I don't listen to it for a while before I come back to do like a final mix of it. But like, you just know, you get a feeling, you're like, all right, this one's okay, it's good. This feels good, now it's finished. There's no bits where you go, God, I need to fix that.
So with regards to obviously going from the that wasn't a duo, the thing you started with first, and then you did Femme and then so on. How did you build your confidence up from the beginning to there? Because
I think a lot of it was I was doing a lot of live shows and doing it in a kind of DIY way, on the Southeast London scene, so all the usual places, Lexington, the Old Queen's Head, Corsica Studios, like all those venues, we would just do our own shows or jump on other friends' shows, and the Amshmarms down in the Across, but if they still do music, they probably do. But yeah, I was doing a lot of live shows, and that certainly is like how build your character pretty quick, because most of the time they're not that easy. The sound's terrible, and you're not in control of a lot of it, but like you learn to be great at handling so many different situations by just doing gigs and doing shows. And certainly I was more on the live side rather than on the DJ side back then. And then my confidence in what I was releasing came once people started to be interested in it, I guess, and it's not all about validation, but to an extent, you kind of do need people to start noticing it. Sure, yeah. Otherwise you can't ever really make that leap from it being a hobby, if you like, to then into like professional world. And I think I was lucky that early on, I through doing the shows and stuff, I got I met my manager quite early. I still work with him today. He was a promoter at 93 Feet East, and nice. He put me on some gigs. And I met him just at a time when I was looking for some help. He was running a little record label and was like, we started to like do a little DIY kind of release. And then as we kind of were working together more, he was like, maybe I don't think you need help on the label side. You need like management. And so that's how we started working together, like just really organically like that. And, we've written out all the highs and like moments where I was just like ready to pack it in,
Yeah,
and we're still working together today. So I feel lucky that I found him, Dan, his name is Dan Garbutt, early on, and we've like ridden it all out together through project to project. And then beyond that, yeah, I guess I got a sync. I kind of got my foot in the door of sync world really early,
yep.
just by luck, really. Dan had some connections in with music supervising and brand stuff, especially. And then my tunes got picked up. And then that was a real eye opener because at that time, say I was doing an alternative pop project, but had like a few strange label meetings with like major labels. Like, those initial meetings where they call you in and then it doesn't ever really go anywhere. But like you're in, yeah, you're in the room and you're like, oh, in the room, and then just either you don't hear from them again or like you do and it comes to show, but like nothing ever really materialized from it. But I got to that stage where people were sniffing around, and then I got my foot in the world of sync, and Adidas started to use some of my songs in their TV campaigns. And that was a real eye-opener to me, because I was struggling to get a record deal to kind of boost the profile of my project. But here was a brand willing to give me like 30, 40, 50 grand for an advert, no strings attached. Great. So I could kind of use that money from those opportunities to then fund my project.
Investing yourself,
yeah, and I was fortunate to discover that early on and have some success in that world early on, which kind of, in some ways, it kind of blinked me a little bit in terms of I became fiercely independent. Because you will struggle, even now, you will struggle to find an independent label that will give you a 30 grand advance to release your music, to release your album. Whereas I was getting this for a single and non-exclusively for 6 months on some TV advert.
Wow.
Owned all my own masters and all my own. I didn't own my publishing. And no, I've kind of had a publisher since the early days as well. But like, I wasn't giving away loads of it basically. And I kind of always had that in my back pocket ever since. Like, I know that I've got some doors open in that world, and there is money there. And that's always been an income source for me, to the point where I thankfully haven't had to rely on touring. Because obviously, you'll know, if you've got family as well, it's touring every weekend as a DJ and making time for family is really, really difficult. So I've never really had, I've never relied on touring as my main income source. It's definitely all the production work and stuff and the sync stuff and my releases that bring in the lion's share of it, and then the touring's kind of on top of that.
Yeah. I mean, I played the London circuit. I played the Ministry, the Fabrics, the Pashas, and the Corsicas and the Lightboxes, and all over the years and stuff in Kent. And even just playing the Saturdays is just a lot for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people do rely on that as their main income for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're like, when you're starting out, or if you're very, very successful, it becomes obviously a lifestyle. But I kind of hit it in the middle, really. I'd started this Lau.ra project, and then the pandemic hit. So obviously that just took gigs away. And I was thankful that I had a studio in my house, and I had this sync stuff going on. I was able to survive off it, because I have other friends who are just mainly touring DJs, and it's like, I can't. I mean, the mental health kind of impact that the pandemic had on people. If you were making all the majority of your rent or whatever money, your living costs off touring, that was like disastrous for so many friends. Oh God, for DJs, yeah, it was. I mean, it's just crazy. I couldn't believe it, and that was one of the reasons why I ended up starting a family, actually, towards the end of it, 2021, because it was like, up until that point, I'd been so singular focused on me and my career, literally since I was 18 years old. I'm going to uni, I'm going to do this course because this is, the best course in London to do interesting, weird music. And I'm going to go do this and this and this and this. And I'm going to get the major label deal. And I was like so focused on like just myself, and not even that far into the future, just totally involved in my world and doing that. And it wasn't until it was all taken away, it was like, no music, literally no music for 2 years, whatever it was, 18 months. I was like, whoa, maybe I should possibly pour my energy into something else as well.
Yeah,
just in case keeps happening, or happens every decade or something. Yeah, it was real, like, it was the pause I probably needed to just refocus myself in terms of looking further than literally just the next 6 months. I was like, okay, what does the next 20 years look like? Is there small people in it, or is it still just me and my husband now? Yeah, and it was quite powerful for me personally, and kind of completely changed the trajectory of my work-life balance, which was needed.
Yeah, and again, like it's touched on a bit like the mental health, like you said previously in the conversation, is like, it's like balancing things properly. Like for me, I have to balance family life, day job, and music and podcasts and things like that. And it is like you say, you have to sort of just balance it and have it out in a good way. Not don't let it drag you down and things like that. So I'm glad you brought it up actually. To be fair, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is so important, some balance and finding some rest, because it's relentless. Like, it's relentless when you're getting it off the ground because you're just so focused on wanting to make it workable. And then once it's workable, it's even more demanding because then suddenly everybody else is getting paid and relying on you working to keep it going. So it's like taking the time and also having team around you and people in close to you that are able to make that space for you is important. I'm thankful that I've got, say, family and also my manager, who is really good at being like, what, let's just take some, it's okay to take some space away from this for a while, because like I say, otherwise it is just so demanding. So yeah, finding some balance and finding a few things that bring you joy have been great.
Yes. Again, it's great you brought it up, because social media shows this 15-second clip of success like that, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, come on now, you got to build that profile, right? And you got to build that your brand and things over time, which kind of goes on to my next question actually, was how did you learn to build your brand from, obviously you learned a lot from the beginning, but starting new projects, how did you learn to build that brand and make it what it is?
Yeah, I guess growing up, I think I always had a love for like the pop icons, so like the Princes, the Madonnas, the Michael Jacksons to an extent, the people that would create eras and looks and complete worlds that are like so off beyond real life, that were like, so I've always really enjoyed that part of pop culture, that kind of imaginary worlds that people inhabit. But David Bowie, as well, like someone like that, he just able to create these worlds around themselves, depending also on from album to album, not necessarily just all the time. So that was always fascinated me. And then I loved a lot of like pop art and 60s stuff, like when I was at uni, and that Andy Warhol and that whole kind of, Studio 54 and all that kind of fantastical, overblown stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think all that bleeds into how I approached the look of things early days. Like if you look at that Femme project of mine, we made all the videos ourselves on like no money, but we were always a lot more ambitious than the budget we had available. And I was lucky that at the time we were students, I was a student, and I had loads of friends learning to do all this other stuff at the same time. So it's like, oh, that person's learning to direct videos, so let's get him to do it for no money. Or, this person's doing makeup design. Oh, she's a makeup artist and she needs to build a portfolio. So let's drag that person in. And, I was lucky that I did that at the time. And I was learning and they were all learning. So we were able to do these things cheaply. And I think that all kind of had an impact then on how I approached my world online when that started to become so important. But I guess it's always just been like just with some authenticity behind it, like as much as it is kind of, I love the magical popness of those projects. When I started to make more dance music, actually, I just wanted to be a bit more real as well. Like I've still all got that stuff, in my background, and obviously probably influences me to an extent.
Yeah.
But as the music changed, and also I stopped fronting the music as much. I started making way more music with other people's vocals and samples and things like that. It's like, actually, I don't want to be front and center of this. I want to step a little bit further out of this and let just the music speak for itself. And then in very recent years, the last couple of years, I think, like social media is just, everybody is trying so hard. It's kind of everything has become a little bit cringe. Even the coolest people are now doing the cringiest shit on Instagram.
Yeah.
Myself included. Like, you know, like never did I think I'd be sat here like every week trying to do a reel of like me in my studio. And I'm like, you know, it's like, I'm kind of, but it's what we're doing. It's the world we're in, right? It's the world we're in.
It is, yeah.
Also, what connects is what is connecting with people right now. So I've kind of, even from the early days, I don't know, when did I get on Instagram? Probably around 2012, something like that, you know, early days.
Yeah.
And then, like, you just used to upload a nice photo of a sunset or something, you know, with your mates. And, like, there was no pressure. Yeah, whatever, like, just anything. You didn't think about it. It's like, oh, I like that photo. I'll just put it up there. And then now it's become this, it's so considered and, like, even, like, DJs that are, or producers, artists that are producing really wicked original music, you know, you might not know them for that. It's this specific kind of format of the reel that they do, you know, this recurring kind of format they have for their reels that go viral that you know them for. It's a weird one, and I'm always quite conflicted about it, really, because everyone says to me like, "Oh, you do it so well. Have you done that?" And I'm like, I don't feel like I do it well. I just know it's important. So I found something that I'm comfortable with that I can do quickly, and I try not to put too much pressure on myself or take it personally when things don't fly.
Yeah,
you know? Whatever. It's like, it's so out of your control to an extent unless you dedicate yourself 100% to being a content creator. And I'm not. I need to make music that makes me money, and the content creation is kind of on the side of that. I can't just dedicate myself to making shit for Instagram. Just don't have time.
Yeah, because again, people ask me this question as well. It's like, you know, do you think social media has now overstepped the quality of music now? Like, people are more focused on the views and now the quality of the music, or do you think there's still that aspect of the music still good, you know, and stuff like that?
I do think there is still tracks and space for music, like tracks that come out of nowhere and are popular because of the strength of the tune.
Yeah.
They are becoming less, like, a bit more like gold dust, I think. Just to get heard, you know, because in my experience of it anyway, I'll make like a, you know, 30-second edit, like bootleg edit, put my spin on it, and it gets way more attention than the original music because people know it. And that's just, of course that's natural. It's like people are literally looking at things for 30 seconds. If it's 30 seconds of something they know and they've heard before, a vocal they've heard before, of course they're more likely to kind of go all in on that than something they've got to listen to again and kind of like, oh, okay, I've not heard this before. You know, it's just unfortunate. But there are people out there who will still want to be music fans. There really are.
Exactly,
like, yeah, and that gives me hope. But like, it's becoming a little bit more niche, I think, in some ways. Like, I don't know, like, yeah, I guess I'm not trying to like break through and have an absolutely massive, humongous global hit. You know, I'm kind of like quite happy just being on the fringes. You know, and I'm like, maybe I'll have an accidental massive hit in me somewhere. Like that might be quite cool, but it's not something, I don't approach making my music with that in mind. So I'm just trying to, I have faith that there's still people out there that are seeking original music, and it's just, it's hard to find it. It's getting harder and harder to find those people, but they are there.
Yeah, like I say, because I asked the question because a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I feel so deflated from social media, like trying to make, you know, music and things like that." And I always like to hear other people's perspectives on it because everyone's perspective is different, you know. And it's like talking about a big track. I looked at your discogs of all the music that you've done, and you've actually collabed with a lot of big people, Ben Boma and people like that. I mean, how did you build them relationships and reach out, or did they reach out to you and build that network?
Yeah, all of them reached out to me, which was wicked, but it was off the back of me being in Ultrista. So me being in that little band, you know, we weren't particularly well known, but we were kind of well respected in a way. I think because of Nigel's connection to Radiohead and like the mega Radiohead fans that were kind of interested in every single side project offshoot that any of those members do.
Yeah.
Like we kind of accumulated a little fan base quite quickly just through the connection, his kind of legacy in music. So like through that, Fortet did a remix for us. So we're this tiny little band that's never done really anything before, barely anyone listening to our music or anything getting played on the radio, but we can manage to get a Fortet remix because he's mates with Nigel. So we had this remix of Small Talk that he had done, and it was it was just brilliant. And this was in 2012. And it started to get played. But again, this was like pre every single thing being videoed.
Yeah.
Like this is Instagram in 2012. So like there was some videos made their way to me, but not like if this was happening right now, that remix would have been everywhere. I'm sure everybody would have been playing it and recording it in their sets. But it's like actually there wasn't the same culture as that back in 2012. Like there was a few videos of it, but not many. But that's how Ben and Odessa and Sasha, that's how all of those producers got to me, because they heard that remix, that Fortet, and they were playing that Fortet remix, and they were big fans of it. And they were like, who's this vocalist? And so they all just crept into my inbox eventually over the years, all with that kind of, and I knew that was the starting point. So in some ways it enabled me to apply that brain that sings in that particular fashion to their tracks and composition. They're like, okay, well, I know you love that Fortet Small Talk remix. I know that's how you've ended up here. So I'm going to take that kind of slice, that side of my creativity and put it onto your tune. And that's how that Bronson tune happened during just, I remember it was written in lockdown or the year before lockdown, and then it came out in lockdown and did really, really well, that Heart Attack tune. And the same with Ben Bowman. I think he then heard the Bronson tune and we wrote that in lockdown over Zoom sessions, you know, in like 3 Zoom sessions. Yeah, I was yeah, it was now that was nuts, right? Because I was like recording in my studio in Brockley, southeast London, and it was like a heat wave. I remember being so hot, and my, you know, it's like home studio. I don't have like aircon or anything like that. I had all the windows open, blaring like traffic noise or whatever. And then Ben's in Berlin, and this kid was just so quick at putting stuff together. I would send him something back, you know, like, oh, I'll just write this thing. I'll send it back. He'd literally have like a whole new version to me within like an hour. I'm like, wow. So that came together so quickly. But he was like, he'd be three in the morning. He'd be like, I've got a new version. I'm like, so like there was a lot of versions of it, but it came together very, very quickly, that song. And then I did a track with Chris Lake and River Star, 2021, maybe 2022. I can't remember now. But that was quite a different vocal style, and that was a weird one because I think one of my a cappellas just happened to make its way to River Star somehow. And that's a strange feeling as a vocalist sometimes, because it's so personal. You know, it's not the same as a beat or a few samples or a... Yeah. Well, maybe it is the same if your instrumental makes its way to somebody that it wasn't necessarily destined for, but it was a nice surprise. And I was like, oh, just randomly got this message from River Star of like, Chris Lake wants to release this. I'm like, what is it? I had to listen. I was like, what is this? And when did I make it? I was like, oh yeah, that is me. But it was made for like a DJ Zinc tune, you know, like 3 years previous. So yeah, it's weird, that stuff as a vocalist, when your vocals start getting passed around people and people make things out of it, because you're like, okay, yeah, it's a good feeling most of the time, but sometimes you're like,
but it's kind of, I mean, I did some of my own vocals back in the day, but I would like change the pitch and everything on it, right? Because I'm not a good singer in any way, shape or form. But it must be a nice achievement to know that other people, and it must be exciting to hear them different types of what their spin on everything that you've done as well. You know, like, oh, I wonder how they've done that, and you know, et cetera, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think hearing my vocal in those different contexts is really what put me on the path to making dance music as a producer, because I was just excited by it. I was like, wow, there seemed to be more possibilities for me creatively in not songwriting. and using my vocal more as a sample, you know. And it's taken me. I very rarely still use my vocal on my own tracks, just because I don't know, some kind of mental block in my head about being able to fit my own kind of soft and deadpan vocal on a really massive banging tune.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like always come to it and I'm like, no, I don't know. I just bottle it. Whereas
yeah.
I feel like other people can recontextualize it on whatever they want, and I'm not as fussed. But there's some kind of mental block in my head about putting my own vocals on some of my own tunes. Sometimes it works, but it's not always the case.
I think, like you said, that you don't want to be at the forefront, right, of that. You want to be kind of back and doing music.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also, it's exciting to collaborate with people, right? Because you'll know, like, so much of dance music, electronic music, especially if you're like a self-producing artist, it's just you on your own,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then releasing music now is mostly you on your own. You know, maybe an email thread with the record label, and a few Zoom calls, but it's like, you know, there isn't much fanfare. There isn't there's very little face-to-face human interaction in my kind of day-to-day world.
Mm.
And so that's one of the joys of doing collaborations with other vocalists. I'm like, I get to have them in my studio, I get to form some relationships there, and it's not just completely kind of me in isolation. Because I think that's important, and like community, and especially since I've moved out of London, like I've had to make a lot more effort with keeping those relationships up, because otherwise you just turn around and you're like, oh, I haven't really spoken to anyone for like
Yeah,
three
yeah, yeah.
weeks. I've just been making tunes and I'm seeing my family, and that's about it. And that was one of the reasons why I started this club night in London called Wonk.
Wonky.
Um, yeah, so we've been doing that about 6 months now, and we just do one party a month at first Friday of the month in at the social, and I've realised that people are like, why did you start this? And it's like, why did I start in my mid-30s as well? Like, think it's totally nuts. We're down there every month, and I'm like, what am I doing? All my mates have moved out of London and had kids. They
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's nobody left, but like this, like it's been amazing for creating a community and a scene and a vibe, and that's been so exciting actually, that to see that there's still a thirst there for a kind of back to basics party. But more than anything, I think it's just bringing people together. It's a meeting place, right? That's kind of
Of course,
what
yeah,
that
yeah.
party's become.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my experience of clubbing when I first got to London in 2006. We didn't really go, I had no clue who I was going to see ever, whether it was Fabric, Corsica Studio. Like, I just knew it was a good spot and tunes would be good regardless. You
Yeah.
know, I trusted that the venue was a good kind of curator and they booked good stuff. So we were never really bothered. We'd go to Corsica Studios most weekends knowing that we'd have a good time, like, and very little awareness of what was happening. And so I kind of wanted to instill a bit of that in Wonk, really, as a place where people will return to and see the same faces and start making relationships there. And we've already had instances of like fans or you know, people that are aware of my music bringing their mates who are also DJs down. And like last month, we had one of their mates open.
That's sick. Yeah, that's
You
cool.
know, because it's
Yeah, yeah.
like very rarely, where in London or anywhere really now with the nightclubs, do you get that close that you're able to actually be like, oh, I'm a DJ too, and I do this, and actually exchange some information. Like, I love going out and DJing, and I've played some wicked shows recently, but there is usually quite a big separation between DJ and the kind of machine and the entourages around that, and the stage and the production, and then crowd.
Yeah.
Whereas at like Wong in this tiny little basement, it's like DJ and crowd. You're
Yeah,
literally close
yeah.
enough to spit on me if you wanted to, you know? And that's what it's about. It's like, it's kind of an antidote to some of the more kind of larger scale events, which have their place and are amazing for their own reasons. But it's like an antidote to that, just being like, okay, let's just get this really back into kind of just minimal production, a dark, sweaty room with good tunes, and an ability and the opportunity to actually connect with the people that are playing the music and making the music. Like, so many of our DJs are DJ producers, playing their new bits and testing out new tunes. And that's kind of what it's become. It's almost like a listening house party, alongside being a club night.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like you say, when you go out to clubs, you don't know who's playing. I think that's a really good way of like actually finding new DJs you know, because a lot of people are like, oh, what's the lineup? You know, I've seen some events they don't disclose the lineup, and it's like you get to experience new DJs that you'd never hear before. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's a really
I
cool
think,
thing.
yeah, right. And I think it's important for people to break through in that way, you know, because it's hard to, as we all know, it's hard to get seen and heard on social media. Everyone
Yeah,
tells you
yeah,
you got to build up, but like getting that first 10,000 fans on Instagram is really hard.
for sure. Yeah,
um, like really, really difficult now. And kind of getting increasingly more difficult. So it's like, how do you do that? And it's like, yeah, I hope that Wonk is providing an opportunity for people to kind of, you know, step up and move up and, you know, just create some community and just create a space where you can connect with people and check in on each other as well, man, because we're all just self-producing artists making music in
yeah, yeah.
isolation. It's
Busy
like it
days,
can be,
work, and everything. Yeah,
yeah, and it can be quite lonely, and it can be kind of you can get kind of, yeah, deflated, like you mentioned earlier, a little bit sometimes, because sometimes it doesn't hit well, or sometimes it doesn't get the support that you hoped, and you're like, okay, that's over, on to the next one, you know. Whereas like having these Wonk parties, it's like been a real something I look forward to every month. I'm like, no, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to see all these people that are there every
yeah,
time, and they're probably going to have more people with them, and it's like, oh, this is cool. There's a real like vibe, and there's something cool happening here. So yeah, we'll keep doing it until we get chucked out of the venue. Let's see.
yeah. I think I think it's also good that you said like when you mentioned like a friend of a friend got the warm up set because when I was started playing 2008 sort of onwards it was kind of like if you don't sell this amount of tickets you ain't getting a slot. So you
Right.
know, and that's kind of what pushed me away from the scene in 2014. I was like, no, I'm not interested in this no more. Um, but I think it's good that you gave these people these opportunities to have a warm up set, because a lot of people don't get that opportunity because there are promoters out there that say, well, you ain't getting any opportunity at all unless you sell at least 20 tickets.
Yeah.
And I think it's wicked that you do that. Like you say, that's a community kind of thing. That's really cool, like doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky that the venue we work with, the social, you know, they don't put any pressure on us at all. It's a free party.
Yeah, yeah,
They are just wholeheartedly behind it. It started off as a kind of one-off EP party for myself, and then the vibes were so good. They were like, "Why don't we just do this? Like, let's just trial this as a monthly thing." You know, but I'm not under any pressure to, you know, it's like, yeah, we obviously want it to be as busy as possible, but actually it's a free party. So
yeah,
it's like nobody's getting paid. None of the DJs are getting paid, but if you want to come and play, like, it's just, it's a really leveled the playing field in a way. It's like, we're all just there for a good laugh.
yeah,
And I think that's like important in an era where events and the successful events have gotten so big, and you know the pressure on those events to shift ticket. You know, there's just such a huge gap now. You know, between your kind of your drum sheds and your like your clubs in Ibiza, then to like this massive wasteland in the middle, and then you've got like, you know, kind of smaller DIY venues just about hanging on. But like, yeah, I guess I just wanted to do something that was no pressure on anybody. It's like, just come and test out your tunes
that's
and make
cool.
sure
Yeah,
friend. And
sick.
like people are coming on their own, you know, like, can I come on my own? It's like, yeah, come on your own, man. Because I'll literally be there from 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, on
yeah.
an empty dance floor, supporting the warm-up acts, you know, like, I'm there. So if you want to come and talk with me and hang out with me, that would be great. So that's
It's
kind
cool
of
you
what it's
do
been.
that, mate. It's cool that you do that. Like,
Yeah,
from
that's
the
good, man. I
start to
need
the end.
it.
Yeah, that's sick. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm literally just here rolling around on my own making tunes. Like, I need a bit of social interaction once a month. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
always there for that.
That's like a Saturday because I'm moving, right? The guys here uh threw me a leaving party and I played for 2 hours. And
Yeah, wicked.
I'm sober, I don't drink or do anything, right? And I was like, yeah, okay. So it was in this like a guy from Mexico. He's got his own little club, underground club, and it's just a hot box in there. It's sweating, and I play. It was like from 11 till 7 in the morning, and I'm
Nice.
yeah, and I was playing like what was it? Two, 11, I was second on. We did 2 hour slots, and after that, it's about 6 o'clock. I went. I'm just going to go upstairs. I went for a kip. I was so
Recharge your
tired.
batteries.
Yeah, yeah. So it's because I'm getting older. I'm just like, I'm just, whatever, right? So, but yeah, like it was like you say, it was like, that was like a community thing. People were like, oh, thanks for what you did for the city, and
Yeah,
bringing
wicked.
awareness and stuff. And That's why I like the whole Wonk idea thing you did and kind of relate to
Yeah,
that, you know. But yeah,
yeah. And I think that's why it's been going so well and growing so quickly, is because people need it. Like, because say a lot of the DJs that we're playing, they are playing the bigger events and stuff as well, and they're all kind of emerging DJs, and they do feel that pressure. And also, there is a culture, isn't it, of all the headline DJs. They're still there, and actually,
yeah,
there's no sign of them moving on or shifting. Um, and so it's like you kind of a little bit reach a ceiling a little bit, unless you get that one thing that just fucking blasts you through the ceiling with that one tune, I suppose. Or that one release that really like makes you take that leap from kind of, mid-level lineup to then suddenly headliner. But we're all just like, oh, let's just have a laugh, like without the pressure of bringing people or selling any tickets. Let's just like, just have, I think it's been needed. And as a result, like we've got so many DJs that want to play it. Like the rest of the year is spoken for, and we're booking into 2025. And I'm like, this is nuts. It's good. It's good.
yeah, yeah. So I want to go a little bit into your production now. Of like what you've got in the box, what sort of plugins you use, and
Yeah.
sort of mastering. Do you do self masters? Do you get other people to master your track? Just things like that. Sort of explain to me like your production process today, like as you do now.
Yeah. Wicked. Well, I'm in my studio. You can't see much of it because my desk is here.
Spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. But I do a lot of my production box, and it will be manipulation of different, drum samples and bass wise, like synth wise. I do use Serum, and I use like a lot of the native instrument stuff,
Yep.
and Contact and Monarch, some of my bass stuff. And then a lot of it is, it's manipulation of audio, and it's kind of pitching and chopping and processing and turning things inside out and on their head until I kind of feel that I found something that's kind of cool and working. And then I have my SH101 synth, which I use a lot for my bass sound, my wobbly, silly bass sounds. I've got this little bag here, my mini Logue synth, which was one of the first synths I ever bought, just because I was in America and it fit in my suitcase.
That the silver one with the little waveform.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's plugged
oscilloscope
in,
on there.
but
Yeah,
yeah, but it's like, $300 or something, $350, and it's like suitcase size. I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, that's good. Because I kind of like, I kind of minimal, as much as my music is minimal, I do also have a kind of a minimal approach in life, to everything. And I don't want too many things or toys. I just want to have a few things and use those really well. And my Chaos pad here, which has been really useful. I haven't plugged this in for ages, but every
That's
time I
old
do plug it,
school.
yeah, but every time I plug it in, I'm like, I should be using this more. Actually, I haven't had it plugged in for probably about a year, but I usually run my like audio stems, my vocals, or like sometimes percussion or whatever. I can run that through there and like get some actual kind of weirder, more unique effects, I suppose, by actually physically touching something.
Yeah.
And plugins wise, I really like all the Sound Toys stuff. I mean, that's just the mainstay of so much of my sound, So Alter Boy I use a lot for processing and kind of making vocals sound a bit weirder. And Decapitator I use Decapitator and Devil Lock. I usually every single bass line I make has got some distortion on it, to some extent, some saturation on it. Recently got into the Dada Life stuff because I'm quite lazy and I quite like one knob
They make
plugins.
sausage fattener, right?
Yeah, sausage
Yeah, that's
fattener,
right. Yeah, yeah,
right down my alley.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like, what, one knob to make everything sound massive?
I
Great.
know. And the sausage's face just goes like,
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I'm gotten into that a little bit. So again, because it's just, I like simplicity and not having to piss about too much with different things. So that appeals to me. And then a lot of them are reverbs and stuff about Valhalla. And I would always usually master for playing out purposes. And I don't ever master my stuff for releases. Recently I've been using 1087 for my mastering. Early on I used Fats Funk, who were, from what I can gather, like a one-man operation in the UK, and they were I was working with Need Want, the label at the time, and that was their go-to person. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. And these masters came back so massive. I was like, right, I used them for a long time. But yeah, I will always usually master my own stuff for playing out purposes. And that was usually just slapping ozone on the end. It's not particularly complex. It would just be, getting isotope, ozone 10 or whatever I've got on there, and just making it sound a bit louder and fatter.
Yeah, Ozone's wicked a lot. I don't really use many plugins. I use Reason. I've been using Reason since Reason version 3.
Right,
so,
wicked.
For many years, yeah. Basically, I grew up in jungle music and drum and bass because I lived on the council estate, and all my friends sort of listened to drum and bass, right?
Yeah.
One of my friends went to college to learn production. He's like, "Oh, I'm actually going to do it," and I was like, "Oh, okay, I want to do it because I like house music as well." He's like, "Oh, teacher." They taught me how to use Reason. I never really come off it, but I know a lot of people use Ableton and Logic. What do you use?
I use Logic.
Oh, you do,
I use Logic just because, let's say, I started on Cubase when I got that kind of cheap how to be a producer
kit,
set up. I started there, but it was a light version of it, and I grew out of that pretty quick. So, and then Logic was just it looked very similar to Cubase, so it was kind of the natural progression. And that's where I've always stayed ever since. I think if I was starting over today, I would probably learn on Ableton, just for the kind of music I'm making, and it just seems a lot quicker. You can do all the same things on Logic, but it's still a little bit more involved to get there. Whereas Ableton just seems a bit more intuitive in terms of just all the different effects and like the kind of just manipulation of sound and stuff. Being able to get there a bit quicker in fewer steps. So yeah, I think starting again, I would probably jump over to Ableton, but I'm just too lazy to make that shift. I can't be bothered.
Yeah,
I'm going to stay on. I'm like, it works. I'm going to stay on Logic. And I still do a lot of tracking vocals and stuff for people, and everyone always bangs on about how it sounds crap in Ableton and it sounds better in Logic. So in some ways, I'm like, that's my reason. I'll stay in Logic. I still do quite a lot of vocal recording for people. Yeah,
that's cool. And I don't want to go into how you reach out to, like, I've noticed you've done like Radio 1, Essential Mix, you've done latest release on the Defected, and things like that. How do you like approach these people to, obviously, do they approach you? Do you approach them? How does that networking sort of happen? I ask this question again for people that are watching and want to learn how to network a bit better. How do you do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so much of those opportunities have come through to me, just through me being able to just building up my releases, building up my online world, and then eventually people getting in touch. I feel fortunate. I guess I've had complete faith in the tunes that I was releasing, that I kind of happened upon this sound and this signature, which means I can get stuff completed pretty quickly and mixed pretty quickly. And so I've just been able to just release. So like this year, I'm releasing like a track every 6 weeks for the whole entire year, and we've already got stuff booked in for next year. And so it's always, I've just been consistently releasing stuff, and also had some really good collaborations, which have kind of, been well supported. Yeah. And then was lucky that early on got the support of Radio 1 dance team, and that was through BBC Introducing. I just started uploading. I just started uploading stuff to the uploader, and I think, I don't know, without sounding like, completely kind of drinking your own Kool-Aid, I think because my music it's not just generic house music, but it's not garage, it's got some grime influence. It's the radio pluggers and the labels in some ways, like they're always interested in it because they're like, this sounds a bit like this, but it's not. It's more interesting. It kind of sits between several different spaces. It's a promoter's nightmare. That's one thing I've found I've really struggled with, getting on other lineups. Yeah. Because they're like, they don't know what to put you. Don't know what to do with you. You don't make generic house music, and you don't fit on like the bass lineups. It's like somewhere in the middle. So it's weird. I've always felt like I have great success at radio and releases and labels, and always interested in, haven't thankfully so far struggled to sign my tracks to people. But then I have this gap in my kind of business somewhere where it's like people struggle to fit me online with other people because they just don't know what to do with it in terms of music. But it's definitely been a benefit for me on the other side of it. So yeah, I don't think I completely lost thread of where we even started with that question, but I don't know if that answered it.
Yeah, I think you kind of did. Yeah, that's good.
Oh,
It's because well, with regards to like obviously networking and things like you said, collaboration is key.
networking. That was
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Networking.
Collaboration is
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty crap networker, I got to say, in real life. I'm that person that will go to a party and kind of quietly observe and not. I mean, I always engage with people if they approach me first, but I've not always been very good at putting myself like out there in the kind of networking. Different at like a party that's like, well, are you just there for a laugh? But like in those kind of, industry mixes or at the conferences or whatever, like I always rather people start a conversation with first than me try and be like, hi, my name's Laura and I make, I just don't really do that. But thankfully, like I mentioned earlier, I've had Dan in my life, my manager from such early doors, and he's brilliant at that. So he kind of takes on a lot of that responsibility. So usually a lot of the biggest opportunities in my career so far have kind of come to me just through my music having caught attention. And then some of the other little opportunities, they're usually through Dan and the people he's spoken to, or people having heard something and then sent me a message on Instagram, and we started there. But I think like now, I was starting out like more than ever, it'd just be about, say, collaboration, supporting other peers, and you just got to keep at it. You just got to make. Eventually, it comes through. It does. Like eventually, if you can afford to keep doing it and keep your overheads low enough that you can make enough time to do it, I think that's probably the greatest advantage you could give yourself now, is being able to afford to keep doing this for as long as possible. And that's difficult, like especially in the big cities where rent's obviously expensive and the cost of living is absolutely bonkers. But like if you can somehow afford to make your music relatively cheaply, but uniquely, eventually it comes through. Just you're kind of, I guess some people kind of drop out the race because they can't or they don't want to continue it. You kind of have to accept that you're going to be skint for at least 10 years. And like, I distinctly remember probably a few years after graduating, meeting up with a lot of my friends who have obviously either done degrees and are in jobs or had already gone straight into jobs straight out of school. And I was like, wow, it was that point where, say, people are starting to get married or settled out and quite serious jobs. You're like, I am definitely not there yet. But then eventually, when you've done it for long enough, it's like, oh, great, this is, it's finally come through and it's working. But I feel fortunate that I was able to establish different income streams early on in my career. Like,
it is, like I say, it's difficult with like cost of living, and I think like you said with what you did with like your uni buddies, is collaboration is key. Like you can meet someone that wants to do this and do that, and then you kind of help each other out. And it might not cost a lot of money, or it might cost a little bit. You know what I mean? So that's why when you mentioned that before, I think that kind of goes hand in hand, like what you're saying now as well.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was gonna say So what advice would you give for people that are up and coming now then? Like what would be your best sort of advice you would, give to people starting out?
I think it would be just to start somewhere, not to wait to feel like you have to hold on to it until it's of a certain quality or until that label signed it, because time will literally just disappear on you and you won't have released any music. Like the best thing you can do is just make something and start, or even just if you want to DJ, it's like just start doing the gigs, and your first gigs are going to be terrible, but just finding that one place that's going to give you a shot. and start somewhere, you know, and just start doing something, because you can practice in your bedroom and you can have all these tunes on your hard drive. And if you don't just take that chance, you may never, you know, you may never get it out ever. You may never make that step, you know. So it's just start somewhere, even if it's even if it's just a self-release, and just start building it up from there. Or it's like, say, a gig, like a local gig in a local nightclub somewhere, warm-up set, something, just start the wheels in motion. And I do feel like once that's going and you stick with it, everything else kind of falls into place, you know, and starts to reveal itself. Especially on the production side, it's like you learn everything, something new from every single release you do. And that also goes for the content stuff. It's like, just don't sit there thinking, oh, I need to get it perfect for this viral moment. Let's just do something, just throw it up there, and then you learn from that, and you tweak it, and you do it up again. You can always delete that stuff, you know. If in 5 years' time you end up blowing up and you're embarrassed by that stuff, just delete it, you know. But you gotta start somewhere, doing something. Don't feel frozen as a kind of in time, and kind of creatively frozen because you don't feel it's worthy. Just start it, just do it. That would be my advice.
That's sweet. And what would be what would you say would have been your highest moment you've had in your career? And what would be like the not so like nice, but what would be the best one you've so?
I think one great like milestone for me was two, but one in particular was doing the Essential Mix, because that for me was like, that was how I started last year basically, and it was totally unexpected. And we were just like, I'd done a lot of the other mixes for the Radio 1 dance team. It was like, there's only one left. Should we just ask? And then they were like, yeah, great. Give it to us in 3 weeks' time. And I was like,
Oh.
yeah, because it was a bit early, to be honest. I really wouldn't have expected to have been asked to do an Essential Mix, you know, and they'd start that intro, you know, the greatest DJs in the world. And I was like, sat home listening to it. I was just laughing. It was like, this is hilarious. But, you know, I worked really hard at it, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. And it was an amazing opportunity, and I felt like it was a real milestone for me. And it's again, every time something like that happens, it's kind of like, it just bolsters your confidence a little bit, you know. You're like, okay, people like this, crack on, you know, let's carry on. So that was definitely a highlight. And then the other one was my first gig after COVID, and after having had my son, I got asked to play the DC-10 New Year's Day party in Ibiza for Circle Loco. Yeah. And I was kind of, you know, coming out of my COVID / new motherhood cave. I was like, hadn't really computed what I was about to take on, really, and what an amazing opportunity it was. So I flew to Ibiza with my 5-month-old son and my husband, and left them in a hotel room, and went and played a great set at that party. And I was just like, it was proper, like, just like stepping into two parallel universes. And it was the moment where I realized, I was like, my life is kind of forever changed in a great way. But it was like, wow, I've just left this kind of sleeping 5-month-old in a hotel room with his dad for the first time, you know, like, just like, good luck. And also I step out, you know, get dressed in silence. And I wasn't playing particularly late. I think I was playing like 8 o'clock at night or something. But then, yeah, go into that kind of banging club. And I think I handed over to Indira Paganotto, which was, and now obviously since then, she's like, the last couple of years, she's absolutely blown up as well. So it was like a real like, wow, okay, this is my life. This could be my life now, you know? And I was like, that was a real nice opportunity. So that was and then after the set, I went back to my hotel. I was like, guys, I can't hang out. I'm sorry. I've got to go feed my kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that was wild, but also brilliant. And I was thankful for the opportunity to play that. What low opportunities on the other side of that. Another amazing club, but it was out playing in Amnesia. I was warming up Amnesia for Danny Howard's residency.
Oh yeah.
And with Gorgon City, not last summer, the summer before. And I'd never done a warm-up set in a super club, ever. You know, I've done warm-up sets, but usually in smaller places, smaller parties. I'd never, ever opened a mega club with no one in it. So yeah, it was really nerve-wracking, and I'd just had never had that experience of walking into a club and it literally, you're starting to play your tunes and they're like reverberating back off the walls at you, and there's like bar staff there cleaning it's just like looking at you, and I'm like, cool. And it's tricky. I mean, this is a whole other conversation and a whole other episode, but it's tricky as a producer artist to know when to play your tunes in the right concert, because my tunes are quite bass heavy, banging.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously there. I've been booked as an artist. You know, I'm not just a warm-up DJ. I'm there as Lau.ra. So you would expect me to play some of my tunes. But also, there's no one in the club. Literally, there's no one in the club at all. There's my two friends who are there, literally dancing around in the spaces big enough to hold like 5,000 people or whatever it is. Yeah. And you're like, wow. That was like, the learning curve was very steep that day. And as a result, I played quite badly because I let it rattle me, you know. And I was like, when you start like overthinking it too much, and suddenly you're like making stupid mistakes, you're like, I've done this a million times. Why am I like trying to loop this in a weird place? Like, I know this tune. Why am I doing this? But you must know that situation as a DJ where you like just start to get a bit rattled, and then like your fingers start working independently of your brain. You're like, ah. So I had a bit of a shake. I felt like I had a shaky set. I'm sure nobody else noticed, but it was like I came away from it thinking, that was a really nice opportunity, but it didn't quite go how I wanted it to.
That bar stuff's like, I don't know. Done all right there.
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah, it was a strange one. But you know, still pleased to have the opportunity and that support from the opportunity anyway. But yeah,
I had a similar thing on Saturday. Funny enough, so I was playing and someone came in to like say, "Oh, how you doing?" Like, sad to see you guys. Like, obviously a leaving party, and I was queuing up the next track in the deck, and then he talked to me, and then I went to cue it to stop it because it was playing in my earphones, and I pushed the deck that was playing. And the whole thing just went boom like that, and I was like, "What?" And I was like, "What the hell?" So I just found one really quick and then started it, and everyone was like, "Way!" And I was like, "Oh, thank God for that." But I must have dropped about 20 pounds in weight, like a stone in weight, just from that in sweat. Because I was like panicking.
Yeah, man. I think that's, for me though, that's what makes great kind of night like DJ kind of performances, like knowing that it, like those mistakes, mistakes happen, man.
Yeah,
but at least this being played, at least there's a like there is somebody actually trying to mix something live. You know, I'd much rather that than just kind of look up, but you know, not be able to see anything in like just a Jesus pose with some sunglasses on the whole thing. Now that's not really my vibe. You know, I like the shaky bits and the weird mistakes, and because it just proves that like actually somebody's making an effort. You know, so yeah, I find those moments hilarious. I had one at Roundhouse once. I was actually opening for Ben Boma. I had an outfit on that had a long sleeve on it. Don't ever DJ in outfits for the first time. Always test them out. That would be my advice. But basically, the DJ before me, for some reason, had got one deck on A or something and the other one on through. And I hadn't even checked. This is like early days in my DJing career where I didn't have the experience to do that you know, few seconds focus where you just look at your mixer and set it all back to how you want it. I was so green. I was just like, just get on and start playing. And then usually two, 3 tracks in, you're like, oh God, why is this all? Yeah. Anyway, my sleeve about halfway through the set, just like whack this crossfader without me realizing. And it felt like the longest, it's probably only like 3 seconds before I realized what had happened. You know, felt like the longest 3 seconds in the world. It was like, like a packed out, sold out Roundhouse and just complete silence. I was like, but yeah, man. They happen. Mistakes happen. Move on. Don't overthink it, right?
No, exactly. When I did it on Saturday, I was like, shit. And one of my mates came over and was like, whatever. And then I was like, yeah, whatever.
Exactly. Whatever.
So what are your future plans then? What have we got in the pipeline that we're going to be sort of expecting from you?
Yeah, I've got a new release coming out on the 14th of June. And that is with Southern Fried Records, Fatboy Slim's label. It's called Another Life, so that's coming out with them. And then I've got a couple of releases on Unknown to the Unknown / Hot House coming out. And then I'm doing another one with Good Company in September. And then some more stuff with Defected, and yeah, like lots and lots of releases basically. And then I'm doing Glastonbury in terms of shows. I've got Glastonbury coming up. I'm playing 3 sets at Glastonbury in the Temple stage, the Stonebridge Bar, and then a secret set that I'm not sure I can say where it is, but I'll put it on socials at some point.
Set, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not like secret set, whatever. Anyway, that'll happen on the Sunday, and then I'm playing at the Defected Tuesdays at Ushuaia in Ibiza on July 16th with like the best lineup: DJ EZ, Sammy Burgee, Majestic, Sam Devine, Ferric Dawn, myself, and Odin and Fatso, I think. So, like,
nice.
Yeah, be wicked. Yeah. Like first time playing at Ushuaia, and the Defected lot are just such good people. Like everybody that runs the events and the team behind it, they're like just good. They're a good hang. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then just lots of wonk parties. You know, first Friday of the month. I'm at wonk down in the basement at the Social in London, and it's free. So just come and find me there. I'm always there.
Nice, that's so cool, mate. And again, Ibiza as well, little family holiday as well. And you get to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know what I mean, like 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, exactly. Although I might need to get like a separate villa for them when I'm like finishing my sets in the middle of the night, and then they get up at like 6 a.m. It's brutal. Yeah, that's life.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely amazing to chat to you, Lau. I appreciate your time as well. I don't deserve anyone's time, but I really appreciate giving me your time.
Oh no, it's wicked. I really love the podcast and what you do, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, and mate, I wish you all the best in the future.
Yourself, and good luck with the move. Hope it's smooth.
Don't, I'm stressed already.
Wicked.